For 4 or 5 days, this dog sat locked in a cage, just sitting there, waiting. His owner had stepped out for what was supposed to be one day, a short trip, some work nearby. He'd be back soon. He wasn't back soon. Days passed. The neighbors did what they could. Someone from next door came by once or twice a day to drop off food and water, enough to survive, not enough to be okay. By day 5, the dog's condition was getting worse. The neighbors made a call. They let him out. And then he was gone. Nobody could find him. 2 to 3 months went by. Then, about 2 to 3 kilometers away, someone spotted him. The dog that had once had a clean, beautiful coat, it was completely matted now, tangled into hard, thick knots against his body. He could barely move. His legs weren't working the way they should. He was weak in a way that made it clear he didn't have much time left if something didn't change. They took photos. They tracked down the original owner and sent them. The owner looked at those photos of his dog, barely able to walk, matted fur, visibly suffering, and said nothing. Then he said something. He said, "That's not my dog anymore. I'm not taking him back." James stood there and couldn't process what he was hearing. He had expected excuses. He had expected some kind of explanation. He had not expected someone to just look at a suffering animal and walk away from it with words. James couldn't do that. He got some help from the people nearby, and they took the dog to the vet. The vet team assessed him immediately. First, they spent some time just calming him down, letting him know he was safe, that these hands weren't going to hurt him. Then they got to work on the coat. The matting was the core problem. Those knots weren't just uncomfortable, they were cutting off circulation, trapping moisture, creating infections underneath. The vet team took a trimmer to the whole thing, working carefully, cutting deep, removing layer after layer of what had become a kind of prison wrapped around his body. James went home that evening and couldn't sit still. He kept thinking about this dog, the cage, the months alone, the owner who had looked at those photos and just said no. There was one problem. His wife, Olivia, did not like dogs, had never liked dogs. The idea of bringing one home was not something she had ever entertained. James called the vet. He found out that once the dog was well enough, he'd be transferred to an animal shelter. That was the moment James made his mind. He was going to bring this dog home. He just had to figure out how to tell Olivia.
It took a lot of conversations, a lot of patience, a lot of James explaining and Olivia saying no and James explaining again. Eventually, reluctantly, maybe a little exhaustedly, Olivia said yes. But the vet wouldn't release the dog until he was fully stable, which meant James had to wait another 35 days before he could bring him home. 35 days of checking in, asking for updates, counting down. When the day finally came, the dog that James brought through his front door was still a little weak. The vet had said to take him on short walks every day to build his strength back up, but he was healthy. Clean coat, bright eyes. James named him Jumper. Nobody in that house had any idea how big Jumper was going to get. They had brought home what seemed like a medium-sized dog, a little thin, a little fragile, clearly still finding his footing. And then Jumper kept growing, and growing, and growing. The family watched this happen with a mixture of surprise and genuine awe. When Jumper stands on his back legs now, the first reaction from anyone who hasn't met him before is a full stop. He is not a small dog. He is a large, powerful, absolutely enormous dog who happens to have the softest eyes you've ever seen on a living creature. And somewhere along the way, before anyone quite realized it was happening, Olivia fell for him. The woman who had never wanted a dog in her house, who had said no so many times, who had finally said yes out of sheer exhaustion, she fell for Jumper completely. His coat, his eyes, the way he looked at you like you were the most important thing in the room. James wants to hold him all day. Olivia has stopped pretending she doesn't feel the same way. The whole family goes everywhere together now. Restaurants, walks, weekend trips. Jumper comes along. He is not a guest in this family. He is a member of it. Fully, completely, without any question. Then the previous owner called. He wanted Jumper back. James said no. Olivia, when she found out, was furious in the quiet, absolute way that is actually much more serious than loud anger. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The answer was no. And the reasoning was simple. This man had left his dog in a cage and disappeared for almost a week. When that dog was found suffering 2 months later, barely able to walk, fur matted to his skin, and photos were sent directly to him, he had said, "Not my dog anymore." That dog is not going back to that man. Not ever. The previous owner said he had a serious problem. That's why he couldn't come back. That things had happened that were out of his control. James listened and then asked the question that had been sitting there the whole time. When Jumper was found, when those photos were sent, why didn't you come then? The call went silent. Then the line went dead. Some questions answer themselves. Jumper is home. He knows it. You can see it in the way he moves through that house, not like a dog that's waiting to be displaced, not like a dog that's still figuring out if this is real, like a dog that belongs there. He was locked in a cage and forgotten. He spent months alone on the street. He came home matted and weak and barely standing, and now he takes up most of the couch, goes everywhere with his family, and makes Olivia, a woman who never wanted a dog, smile every single morning. That's Jumper. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel.
Ні, стоп. Стоп.